This video demonstration will walk you through how to create a simple video slideshow. The slideshow will consist of 5 to 7 images of your choosing. You can choose things from festivals, events, it can tell a story. So ultimately, the pictures and the theme that you create is ultimately up to you. The purpose of the assignment as well, not only to learn about how to create a slideshow, is to create a concept. The concept is built by fonts, colors, and imagery. So you may want to sketch out what you want it to look like. Spend some time picking out the font from Google Fonts, Adobe Typekit, and pick out the images that will help you to build that theme. So that could be the background images and the image that is actually in the slideshow. The video demonstration is going to walk you through how to set up the basic HTML and CSS and include that spot of JavaScript that will actually create the slideshow itself. I have the start of my root directory. Inside the images folder, I have my background and 5 images that I'm going to put inside of that slideshow. One of the first things that it asks us to do is to optimize the images. And what that means is we want to make sure that the image's size that we're going to use is the size of this image. So you can see that this image is 3264 by 2448 and it's 2.9 megabytes. This nowadays is not really that big of a deal because of our high-speed internets, but really we need to optimize the image. We need to make sure it's 72 dpi and it's the exact size intended. So we'll take these images in Photoshop once we've determined what size we want our slideshow area to be, and we'll size them down and we'll put them in the correct settings. So inside my root directory, I have my images folder, and then I'll also have my index page and my styles that we're going to create here in just a few minutes. I am using brackets for my editing. So I'll do File New, and then I'm going to do File Save As, and I'm going to navigate to my folder. And I'm going to name this index.html. And then I'm going to do a new one. I'm going to save it. Navigate back to that folder that I have it in. Styles.css. So now you can see in my root directory, I have the images folder, the index, and the styles sheet sitting right there. All right, so let's start building out the index page first. We want to have our doc type, and then we're going to have HTML. And remember, you should always be building inside of HTML5. So I'm expecting to see that. I'm going to have my head tags. Inside my head tags, I'm going to link to my style sheet that I have out there. And you can see it's prompting me. I'm also going to give it a title. And you'll title this whatever is appropriate to your theme. That's in my head, and then I'm going to put in my body tags. And I'm also going to have my header. And I'm going to add a section area where I'm going to put my content. So in my header, I'll have my H1 tag, and that will be Flower and Garden Festival. And I'm going to put the other one in H2. And I'm going to say at Disney's Epcot. Then down in my section area, I'm going to put my very first image of my slideshow. So I want that to be, it could be really any of them, but I'm going to put this one right there. I'm going to give it an alt tag so a screen reader can read that. And then I'm going to give it a width. Now, I've already predetermined what I wanted by going into Photoshop and then sizing them down to see, what is a good height and width for these images. And I'm going to give it an ID, and you'll see why we're going to give it an ID in just a second here. So the ID I'm going to call slide. And then we have to add in the actual script that is going to run our slideshow. JavaScript can go in multiple areas. It can be linked externally, it can go in your head tag, and it can go into the body. So no matter where you put this is fine. In this example, we're actually just going to go ahead and put it right inside of the body tags. And we're going to start to write the basic script. So I have var I equals 0, semicolon. Var path equals new array. And what the array is, it's like looping itself through the images. So you can think of an array like that. So then I'm going to start counting. So path starts with 0. And this will be my first path. So it will be my first image that I had. So I'm going to do images, and then I have IMD211.jpg. And I think there's an underscore in here. So make sure it's pretty particular. And then semicolon. And then I'm going to have path, and I'm going to count. So 1, and then that will go to my next image. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to just copy this, and I'm going to paste it down. So then 2, 3, and then 4. And this will be the same thing again. So it will be images, and then I'll have IMG, and make sure I put the semicolon at the end of each one. Once you have all of your images in, now we're going to write the actual function. So I'm going to say function swap image. And I'm going to say document. And it tries to help, so get element by ID. And I'm going to tell it slide. And then .src. And I'm going to tell it to go to my path. And it will start counting as well. So I'll say path. And here's my loop where it will say if I, and then it will look at the path length, -1, and then I plus plus, semicolon, else I equals 0, semicolon. And then here is where you can set your time. So how fast do things happen? So swap image. Comma 4,000. And then we need to tell it to call it. So we need to go back up to our body, and we need to tell it, hey, you need to go call that. So I'm going to say onload equals swap image. And I'm going to save that. So here's our function. We're running through the path, and you can see them since they're linked correctly. And it's telling it to, the slide is the same slide up here on the ID. Then it's telling to run through the path, and I spelled else wrong. It's running through the path at I, and it will keep running through it all. Okay, so make sure you have the script as it's typed right here. And if you do nothing else, no other formatting, and we go out and we check it, you can see that the slideshow is functioning. So there it is. So this is a good place to go ahead and pause the video to make sure that you have your scripts correct before continuing. So making sure that the slideshow works before you even go ahead and get anything formatted. All right, so now we want to start building the format. So I will start out with my body tags, and I'm going to give it a background image, and I'll do URL. It's going to be inside my images folder, and I'm going to pick my background. I want to center it, so background position. I don't want it to repeat. And I want to tell it it's a size, so I want to tell it's going to be at the cover. So background, I want it to cover the entire background. And then I'm going to go into the header. I want it centered. So I'm going to do text align center. I want the color to be white. This is going to be the color of the text. And I want the margin to come down from the top a little bit, about 50 pixels. Now H1, here I also want the color to be white. Padding, I'm going to set it to 0 pixels because H1 and H2 inherently have padding around it. So I want to control that more. I want to control it with line height. So that's why I'm putting the margin and the pixel, or the margin and the padding set to 0 pixels. I want to have a text shadow on it. And I'm going to do 2px, 2px. And I just play with these. And then I want to tell it that I want it to be black. I want the font size. Even though the H1 typically will come with a font size, you can definitely build that in there. So 75 point. And this all came from just me playing with the different sizes, trying to adjust the different sizes on it. And line height, 50 pixels. H2, I'm going to do something very similar. I'm actually going to take all of this and then just adjust what I want. Line height, I'm going to set to 90 pixels. Font size is going to be 40. And I'm going to come in here and add some fonts here in just a second. I'm going to hit save. And you can start to see how my page is building. Now, granted, I have not done a responsive site on this. So yeah, things are sort of sliding over differently than how they looked initially when I started the presentation. But the slideshow is still working. The background's filling where it should. I have my font going already. I just need to go and find the font I want and implement that. And then in the section, I'm going to tell it to move it over. So I'm going to say margin top. I want it 50 pixels from the header. This will be margin left is 800 pixels. Width is going to be set to what I had before. I set those images to. Height 433. I want to hide everything else, so if it is bigger, it'll be hidden. And then I'm going to put in a box shadow here. So 5px, 10px, and I'm going to make it black. And this is my CSS setup for my page itself. The next step, and you can tell how it's now slided over, Now that I have the basic structure down, I'm going to go to Google Fonts and look through a variety of different fonts to try to find the best font that's going to communicate the message that's intended. Flower Garden Festival, I think of cursive A fonts, and things like that. So I spent some time going through here and I found one that I like. It's called Dancing Script. I'm going to add it. And what's nice about it is it tells you exactly how to do it. I'm going to use this import. I'm going to come back to my file style sheet. I'm going to paste it. I'm going to come grab my font family and I'm going to apply it to my H1. And you can see there is my script font. Then the other font that I'm going to go find is the next one for the H2 tag, the Disney Epcot. I'm going to go ahead and clear it because I'm looking for another font. I'm going to say wire 1. I'm going to add it. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say import. Go into my style sheet. Paste it. Wire 1. Go back into my style sheet. And paste it. And then I'm going to take a look and see what that looks like. Now these fonts are easy to switch out if you find different fonts along the way. Then I can work with colors if I prefer a different color. I can also look at different fonts if I want. I can increase the line height or decrease it. So that was found here in the line height. So maybe I want to take it down to 80 pixels, or maybe I want to increase it. And see, it's getting kind of close. So maybe I want to go back and maybe say, and you can see how that adjusts that height there. So that's what I do. I spend some time adjusting based on what I see when it finally comes together. I have a general vision and then I want to pull it all together. So then I can adjust that line height. I can modify the margin. So if I want more space in between this last one, or if I want less space, I can adjust those margins. So it's always just a good idea to get it all in place and then work with that little minutia fine detail. So the last thing we have to do is optimize our images, and I'm going to take those into Photoshop. Now, if I go under image and then I do image size, we set our image to be 650. You make sure it's constrained. You set it down to 72. You can see it went from 51.3 megabytes to 824.6 kilobytes. I'm going to hit OK. And then you can view it, and then you can say 100%, so you can see what that size is going to look like. And then I'm just going to go ahead and save all these. I'll just kick it up to a large file. It's not really going to change too much the file size, so I'm going to take that to 650, 72, hit OK, save it, kick it up. And I'm going to do that for every single one of these images. Now, you're not going to see the change on your page, but you're going to see it as far as the file size goes. So some of these are already taken down 414 kilobytes. That's what it means to optimize it. Make sure it's the correct size, make sure it's 72 dpi, and that it's a quick download. So I'm going to do that for every single one of my images. I'm going to save those all, and then I'm going to just test to make sure that everything is working before I submit. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm just going to verify that my page layout looks good, my slideshow is working, everything's the way that I want it. Then I'm going to zip together that root directory, including the images file, the index, and the CSS for submission. And this is how you create your first simple slideshow gallery.